What's up, guys? This is Caden Reese, and this is the Project Files. We're just gonna hop straight into it. Have you ever been scrolling on Netflix for 30 minutes and then you decide not to pick anything at all and end up just scrolling on your phone instead? Or have you ever been at a restaurant and you've stared at the menu for 15 minutes while you're waiting for the waiter or waitress to come back and you decide to pick the thing that you always pick even though you've been looking at every single option for the last 10 minutes? Or have you ever overthought and thought about something, one choice or decision for so long that you end up not choosing anything at all? So, this is actually a psychological thing called decision paralysis, and I'm super excited to dive into it. So, over the course of the next month, the next 4 weeks, we've got 12 episodes coming. It's all going to be based on overthinking. And this first week is going to be all things decision paralysis. So, later on, we're going to talk about and decide how to make it easier. But today, we're going to focus completely on understanding the problem and recognizing it for ourselves. Decision paralysis is essentially a mental freeze or a mental block when we have to make a choice, whether that's a big choice or a small choice. It happens every day. And it can often come from having too many options, and those too many options can lead to us feeling overwhelmed or exhausted, and then we just decide to go back to what we are comfortable with. It can also come from the fear of making a wrong move, which then delays our thought process or our decision making because we're afraid that it's going to be the wrong choice. And then that delay then goes back to more anxiety and more a feeling of being overwhelmed. So it just all piles back into each other. And often our thinking becomes a trap because we find something and we start to analyze it, we start to break it down, and then we start to compare our findings with other options or other decisions. And then from that comparing, we then break down into second guessing and we are unsure. And then we go back and forth and back and forth. And then it just repeats itself over and over again. And at the time, in the moment, it feels like we're being productive and trying to make the right decision. But the product isn't there. We end up producing nothing. And at the end of the day, we're not any farther than when we started because we're still having those same thoughts at the beginning. So this can often feel like, I don't know what to do. What if I mess up? What if there's a better option? Or I need to be 100% sure because we want to make sure that we're comfortable and confident in our decision. But the end result always comes in a few different things. It can come in the form of procrastination. It can come in the form of avoidance. It can come in the form of just defaulting back to what our choices were at the very beginning before we even had any options. And the most important and the most critical that we're trying to avoid altogether is making no action or no progress at all. So I like to think of this, and the easiest example that I want to break down for you guys is if we go to a restaurant. So if we're at a restaurant and the waitress or waiter comes over and gives us our menu and says they'll be back in 10 minutes, which that happens fairly regularly. And so we're excited and we sit down and we start going through. And for me, it's always the steak. Steak is always a go-to for me, and it always feels pretty safe. So I start and it's like, okay, I've had the steak before, so maybe I'm going to try something else. And then it's like, well, the country fried steak I've heard is pretty good. My brother loves the country fried steak, so I'm sure that would be a good option. But maybe today I'm feeling a salad because I've already eaten other stuff for lunch, and now maybe I should do a salad for dinner. But then it's like, ooh, this one's the chicken salad, but they have good chicken tenders, and I love chicken tenders, so maybe I should do the chicken. But maybe I haven't had their fries, and what if their fries aren't good? And then if their fries aren't good, then I'm going to be mad because then I'm only going to be satisfied with half of my meal. So maybe I'll just go back to the burger that I had the other day that was really good, but I didn't like the burger as much as I liked the steak. So maybe I should just do the steak. And it just tumbles and falls one over the other, and then we go back to the beginning, and then we start to break it down again, and it just gets super crazy and super overwhelming. So a lot of the time, this decision paralysis happens with high achievers. And all of us are high achievers. We just maybe need to get comfortable with the thought that we're high achievers. And decision making becomes more important and more critical when you care about the decision, and then when you care about the decision, the pressure is here and then it goes up to here. So the pressure starts low at a restaurant. Excuse me. At a restaurant, there's probably not a ton of pressure until the waitress or waiter gets there, and then it's like, well, crap, I have to make a decision and I don't know what to do. And then we start to do all of that really fast in the span of 5 seconds, and then we just go back to what we originally picked. But in bigger decisions in life, whether it's maybe trying to find a new job, or trying to decide which classes to take in school, or trying to decide what to wear for your business meeting, those decisions could have consequences, and you care about those consequences, and that creates the pressure, and then the pressure builds up and builds up and builds up, and it just finally gets to where you can't take it anymore. And then that's where we see the results of no decision at all, or going back to what we feel comfortable with. And it almost feels like the choices are part of our identity, and we might have a thought of, this decision proves who I am and what I'm trying to portray. And behind all of that is the fear of maybe regret. Well, maybe this would have gone better if I was wearing red instead of blue. Or maybe if you're trying to decide on what to eat and all your friends got the steak and you want the burger, maybe you pick the steak as well because you don't want your friends to give you crap for picking the burger. Or maybe it's a decision of, okay, I'm going to go on this career path not knowing what it's going to lead to. And what if it fails? I'm in a safe job right now. I'm in a comfortable position right now. And branching out and trying to make this big choice could lead to failure. And then I'm going to start all over again. And it happens a lot. And hopefully this next little bit can help us kind of break down and understand what's going on so that we can try to avoid that, or at least get it under control. So the first study that I have found super interesting is all about choice overload, and it's the JAM study. Sheena Leinger and Mark Lepper did this study back in the year 2000, and I'm going to kind of break down what it was. So they set up two JAM stands, or places where people could go and buy jam. One jam booth had 6 options of jam, and the other had 24 options. So as you're doing this, it's like, oh, well, I would probably go to the 24 because there's more options, and then I'm going to be more comfortable with the decision. And actually, as they were doing the study, they did find that a lot more people went to the booth with 24 jams. But the crazy thing is, at the booth with 24 jams, way more people bought nothing at all. So they had more options, and it led to them not buying anything at all, versus at the 6 booth stand, they found that every 3 to 4 out of 10 people were buying jam, where at the 24 booth, it was like every 1 out of 10 people, which is kind of crazy, because when I first was looking at it, it's like, well, obviously I'd go to the one with the more so that I have more options to choose from. But a lot of time, those more options lead to less decision making in the end. And in this study, they found that from 3 experimental studies, starkly challenging this implicit assumption that having more choices is necessarily more intrinsically motivating than having fewer. So that means that we're maybe motivated by more options, but our decision making isn't near as good. And often, too many options or too many choices lead to that brain freezing. Another study that I found was more about decision fatigue, and it was a study done by Roy Baumeister, and it talked about and found that self-control and decisions are used by fuel, and that fuel has a limit. We don't have an unlimited tank. So they found in this, they were doing a study, and they found that self-control is a central function of the self and an important key to success in life. So we have to be able to take everything that's going on in our brain and calm it and control it and focus it in on something, because if we don't do that, then we're never going to progress. They also found that the exertion of self-control appears to depend more on a limited resource. And then, as well as that, they found that just as muscles get tired from exertion, acts of self control cause short term impairments or ego depletion and subsequent self control, even on unrelated tasks. So it's crazy that if we're focusing on one thing, that our fuel that's used there, it's going to impair our self control and our decision making on everything else that's going on in that time period. So, the biggest findings that I found super interesting from this are that too many decisions lead to mental fatigue, and that mental fatigue then leads us back to avoidance and that mental freezing in that decision paralysis, which is super crazy. And I also found a third study, which is super awesome, and it was about judges and their own mental fatigue. So, Danziger, Lvov, and Avname Peso in 2011 did a study on judges and their parole decisions during their judging sessions or their court sessions. And as I'm going through, also, if I pronounce the names wrong, I apologize, but I'll do the best I can. Anyways, they found it was all about judges and their decision making on parole throughout the course of their day. And what they found was that at the beginning of the day, the judges were very more locked in and they found the decisions easier and more straightforward. But as they started to go on longer and longer, just like any of us, they started to get tired and their brains started to fatigue. And by the end of the day or by the end of one of their sessions, their decision making was a little off, or maybe it took them longer to decide on a decision, or maybe it resulted in them having to do another session with this same trial because they just weren't sure of what they were supposed to do. And so often they found that if they took breaks of even as little as 5 minutes to 10 minutes, that fatigue reset to a much lower point, that they were able to really lock in and focus in on what they were doing again. So thought that was super interesting as well. And in there, they talked about, and this is a quote, "We test the common character of realism that justice is what the judge ate for breakfast, and sequential parole decisions made by experienced judges." So if the judges woke up and they were ready to go and ready to rock and roll for the day, they often found better results in what the judges had to say or decide on than if they woke up and they just weren't feeling it that day. Which makes sense, because it's like that in every area of life for all of us. If we wake up ready to go, we often feel that the day's gone better because we were more comfortable making more decisions faster, which is super cool. And they also found that the percentage of favored rulings dropped from 65% to nearly zero within each decision session. And then it returned abruptly back up to right around that 65% after the break, which is crazy. So findings for me on that was that fatigue pushes humans toward a default no. So as we're going through, the more decisions that we have to make and the more options that we have to build our decision off of often ends in a result of us just saying no because we feel so overwhelmed. And the other super big thing that I found in this finding, in this study, was that breaks actually can restore that decision quality almost back up to where we started with, which is crazy. It's crazy that you can be going for a couple hours and then all it takes is a 5 or 10 minute break, and then from there all of a sudden you're back up to almost where you started, whether it's a break for a drink of water or a break for food, or even just a break for a mental reset that you just need to go and walk away for 5 minutes and come back and then find it. In the end, taking that 5 minute break and making a decision is going to get you a lot farther than if you were to focus on that decision all day and not decide something and have to come back to it the next day. For me, as I've been going through, I've found that the less time I give myself to make a decision, the more decisions actually get done, which makes sense. So that's one challenge for you guys, is as you're going through, try not to think about something for too long. And if you feel overwhelmed, stop thinking about it, take a break, take a reset, and then come back to it, because as we're going through, you'll be able to make a decision probably faster than if you wouldn't have taken a break at all. And then another thing to build off of that as well is, if you focus on making one decision a week, you're not going to get near as far as if you focus on one decision a day. And if you focus on one decision a day versus one decision an hour, then you're going to get a lot more done. You can make, if we're awake for 18 hours out of the day, you can pick 18 decisions. You have 18 choices versus one choice a day. And I don't know all the math behind it, but 18 times 7 is much more than 1. So that, I mean, it's probably around 100 choices or decisions you're making versus one choice if you decided to break that down into 18 a day versus one a week. And even if you sit down and after looking and making a decision, if you find out that it's not right, then you can change that choice and change that decision the next day, especially on your day-to-day tasks. You can adjust that and pick a different option the next day, and you're still going to be ahead than if you were waiting for Sunday to make that decision. So we're not always going to make the perfect and right decisions every single time, but as long as we're trying and we're focusing and making a decision, we're going to progress more, because the worst case that happens on something, it might be, okay, I made this decision and it didn't work. So now I know that this isn't going to work. So now moving forward, maybe this is still going to be an option, but it's going to be lower for me because I know it didn't work. Or maybe it didn't work for this circumstance, but I feel like it's going to work in the next circumstance better. So now, when that other option is there, or that next decision that I'm making is there, it's okay. I did this with this thing and it didn't work, but maybe I'll try it again and it's going to work. And just don't overthink it. Don't overcomplicate it. Way too often we get into that and we start to just same thing, snowball effect, and then pretty soon we're exhausted and tired and don't want to make any decisions, and then we postpone it till the next day, when really in reality a lot of the time we probably could have made that decision in 5 or 10 minutes. So some real life examples that as I kind of was reading through these studies and breaking down, I wrote down a bunch of things that I had been maybe not even realizing I was doing, but that have actually held my progress and my decision making going forward. As I've started this business, I contemplated a lot on my logo and my brand name and my website. If I'm being completely honest, I bought my domain and had my website purchased back 5 months ago, but then for some reason I had that brain fog, and it took me 5 months to edit and get to a point where I'm like, okay, I feel comfortable doing this. And I would think about something for a couple days, and then I would decide not to change anything. And then a couple days later, I would go back and it's actually, I do need to change this. And yeah, 5 months later, it's like, holy crap, I could have had this posted. I'm not locked into these changes. I can still make changes to this website, or maybe I need to adjust this offer, or maybe I want to add something to the website. I could have done that, but I procrastinated and I was so afraid of, what if it doesn't work? What if it's not going to look good? What if it doesn't catch people's attention? That I ended up not getting anything out there. And since then, I found that it's better to have something that's not perfected out there than to chase perfection that's never going to be there. And that has helped me a lot in this process over the last little bit. And I've already changed my logo like 4 times. And since I've published my website, I made 10 plus changes to it. And I'm going to keep making changes because I am chasing that perfection. And I don't think chasing perfection is a bad thing. I think that's something that we should all strive for. But we can't let that perfection diminish our progress because we are so focused on only putting out the best and the perfect, because it's never going to happen. No matter how many times you do something, there's always going to be something that you want to change or adjust or simplify or break down or maybe complicate a little bit more. So it's always going to be there. So don't let that perfection and the fear of not being perfect hold you back from those decisions that you would have made. Another thing that I found as I've been doing personal trainings and breaking that all down is there is a million different ways to lose weight. And there's a million different diets, and there's a million different workout plans. And not every plan is going to work for everybody, and not every diet is going to work for everybody. But the more you overwhelm yourself with that, the less you're going to do. At the end of the day, in my opinion, weight loss comes down to eating less calories than you are burning. And if you're burning more calories than you eat, then you're going to lose weight. It might not be substantial and it might not be huge, but that's that simplified. That's all it comes down to is eating less calories than you burn. And no matter what diet you're on and no matter what workout program you're on, if you're burning more calories than you eat, you are going to lose weight. And I think a lot of people just try to overcomplicate things like that. So kind of as I've been breaking this down, I've found that indecision is a decision in itself, and you're choosing to stay stuck on a choice. What I mean by that is by not making a choice and by overthinking and analyzing and then repeating that same process over and over again, you're actually deciding in that moment not to make a decision. You're pushing it off, and pushing it off is a decision. And by choosing to not make a decision and not deciding, you're literally going to be stuck in the exact same position that you were before. So, would you rather be stuck in that same position as before, or make a decision and maybe it doesn't work and maybe you'll go, one step forward and two steps back, but maybe two steps back gets you out of the mud and into dry ground where then you can start again and you're not going to be stuck because now you have more clarity because you know that, okay, this option isn't going to work. I'm going to cross that off. So now that leaves me with this option. So now if I go this way, maybe that time I'm going to jump 4 steps forward and then I'm only going to fall 1 step back. And it's a ladder that a lot of people are so worried about that they just end up not making any decisions at all. And it's okay to decide something and it be the wrong decision. At the end of the day, we probably learn more from our failure than we would if we made the right decision every time. If we made the right decision every time, we might be feeling like we're more successful, but we're also not going to know what went wrong with the other decisions and why this worked. And for me, I like to understand that my decision worked because these other things didn't. If I make a decision and it works, then it's like, well, I wonder if it would have worked if I would have done this instead. And sometimes that is just as much of a leader to that decision paralysis as not making a decision at all. So remember that indecision is a decision and you are choosing to stay stuck by not deciding. So overall, decision paralysis is the fear of wearing a mask. We're afraid that if we make a decision, it's not going to be true to who we are or comfortable with what we're trying to portray or put off. And excuse me, we're afraid of being somebody that maybe we don't feel like we are. And that even if it's somebody, we're aiming for somebody and we want to be up here and we're here, we might not feel like we're confident and comfortable enough with being that person who is a tier above us. And then we freeze because we don't know what to do because that doesn't feel like that's who we are. Decision paralysis, it's a fear of pretending to be analysis. So it's fear pretending to be analysis. Sorry. So decision paralysis is fear pretending to be analysis. So as we're going through, maybe we feel like we're analyzing and doing all the right things, but maybe we're just putting off our decision because we're afraid of what's going to happen. And a lot of the times and often we find ourselves not needing more information. we need more clarity and movement. I'm going to say that again. You don't need more information. You need more clarity and movement. If there's 30 options that are all very vague and they lead to more questions, is that really better than 5 options that are broken down step by step that are going to give you direct paths to that goal? I think it's more important to study out the options and make a decision quickly based off of that than trying to find more options if we feel comfortable with the options that we have. So, in closing, decision paralysis isn't weakness. So, focus and remember, just because you have decision paralysis does not mean you are weak, does not mean you are making the wrong decisions or anything like that. Decision paralysis is real and it's a psychological thing that we all have. Every single one of us have it. It's just trying to learn and focus on that and break it down. So, decision paralysis is often having too many options or feeling too much pressure and having too much fear. So, if we can break down those options and pressure and fear and really simplify it, then it's going to be easier for us moving forward. So, my challenge for you over the course of the next few days is to focus and name a decision you've been avoiding. It could be big, it could be small, it could be something as simple as wanting to decorate your house. It could be something as big as maybe wanting to switch jobs. But focus on one thing. Write that thing down. And we're not going to solve it today. I just want you to pick one decision and decide on that decision. Write it down. We're not going to solve it today. I just want you guys to face that decision. And in the next episode, we're going to talk about steps to making that decision easier. So this is the project files, and I'm super excited. We're just getting started.